Hello and welcome again to the MorfBeeX channel. Today I'd like to talk about one of my favorite decades, a decade that's still so relevant today, the 1970s. Some albums right away that I think of when I remember the 70s that you still hear today: Foghat Live. This one's really interesting. So I got this on eBay actually, and you see a black and white back to it and you think, is that a bootleg? And really, it's an official bootleg. This was ordered from a U.S. Navy, I believe he was U.S. Navy person who had been stationed in Taiwan and bought this. So I can imagine somebody on leave grooving to some Foghat. Now, I'd seen them many years later, and they were still great. You gotta love some Foghat Live. What's so interesting about this, I've had many copies of it through the years, that the live part, that was the inner sleeve, so you could flip it around, you could have a different look to it. This one, it's shrink wrapped on the inside and out, so completely different pressing that I've never seen. And the live does not slide through. So very interesting, great lineup, great song tracks, and just an interesting version of that I'd never seen anywhere else. So I can just imagine somebody on leave grooving to some Foghat. Another band that comes to mind right away. This is on K-Tel, Creedence Clearwater Revival. And here you have the 20 super hits. There's actually on YouTube, the commercial for this still exists. I remember seeing it well into the early 80s. This pressing here was 1977. I actually found this sealed, had to open it. And it was at the Electric Fetus, which is a legendary record store in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The track listing is phenomenal. And many of these songs are from the 70s. Here you have that. K-Tel, CCR's Super Hits. So some of the K-Tel records were compressed and shortened songs. You really don't notice that on this one. It sounds good to me. My favorite Creedence vinyl is a little before that. And we have it right here. So you can't go wrong with that. That's going back a ways. So we're going to circle right back into the 70s. All their stuff, though, even early CCR, still influential today, and just soundtrack of the 70s, even though some of the songs are clearly from the 60s. Another band that you still hear very often, it's interesting, on Jet, on the Jet label. ELO. So here we have ELO's greatest hits. At the end, stay tuned. We'll have some bonus vinyl and some other media, some mystery albums, if you will. Now for something completely different. Here's something that's not always thought of as a 1970s album, but it's late 1979, and it was a sign of things to come. I love every song. Phenomenal. Gary Newman, Pleasure Principle. Also have the 45 for Cars. You almost think of it as a 1980s release because it was so futuristic. Can't go wrong with Gary Newman. Peter Gabriel, often referred to by many fans as Car. Early Peter Gabriel. The 70s were such a groovy time, so many different styles of music. We're going to run through a bunch of titles. We'll name check songs on many other videos, and in some of our past videos too, we dig deeper into the music. I just like getting into it right away, showing the titles. There's just so many from the 70s to cover, and I could talk all day about it because I love 70s music. This one's quite an interesting album. Tim Buckley, Happy Sad. That is my favorite Tim Buckley album. He covered so many different styles of music, and I could talk a lot about him. We're going to show Jeff Buckley. This is many years past the 70s, but this is his son. And I got into Tim Buckley's music because I wanted to know more about Jeff Buckley. And it's an interesting story. Tim was often on tour and didn't really know his son very well, but there is a similarity. There's a definite similarity in their voices. Lou Rawls, a sign of things to come, you'll never find. So I love this album. This is a great 1970s album. You can just picture people on the dance floor, as well as shucking and jiving to some ZZ Top fandango. What's really, really, really interesting about this album is we have side 2 is all live, and side A is studio. Phenomenal ZZ Top, legendary, that little band from Texas. The Rolling Stones. So this goes on through the 80s, but many of these songs on Best Of are 70s, and some of their best of stuff is from the 70s. What great music. So the Police, Outlandish D'Amour. Always interesting. Vinyl and inner sleeves. I saw them on the Synchronicity tour with Ministry opening up. It was quite the double bill, and it was great. Regatta de Blanc. Great albums by the Police. And here is the singles. So a lot of 80s stuff. Definitely some 70s stuff on here as well. Definitely a must-have back in the day, Fleetwood Mac. Still a must-have today. Great songs on the greatest hits. Journey. So this came out after the 70s, but a lot of the songs are from the 70s, and some of the best songs are captured. Live vinyl with a studio song at the end. We're going into Turbo Overdrive just to keep showing the 70s stuff. And we dig a lot deeper, like I said, on our other videos. Steppenwolf. Born to Be Wild was always a karaoke favorite of mine. Magic Carpet Ride as well. We have those on a 45. This is At Your Birthday Party. Little River Band Greatest Hits. I tell a story on another video about Little River Band without being redundant. I had heard them live one day when I was moving. A lot of these songs are from the 70s. Great, great songs. I could hear them from blocks away. It had been a storm the day before, and they were touring with Joan Jett. And so I heard Little River Band back up Joan Jett. And that was pretty cool. I love rock and roll with Little River Band. And Joan Jett on lead vocals, of course. Dire Straits. Communique. Lady Rider is an all-time classic. And there's something about Dire Straits that's amazing, is that when you hear Mark Knopfler on guitar, one strum, and you know that's Mark Knopfler, similar to the musicians like Alex Lifeson from Rush. This is a radio DJ copy, 2112. Another DJ copy, Hemispheres. Media copy here. Some of those early songs are on Icon. Mostly side A is the 70s stuff. It was a groovy time in the 70s. So many genres of music that were cool. This is one of my favorite Led Zeppelin albums. It's in my top 3. A lot of people would disagree. I love the John Paul Jones stuff. He had a lot of Hammond B3 going on this. Led Zeppelin covered so many different styles of music. And we'll do a deeper dive on a lot of the heavy hitters of classic rock. We'll do that in another video. So here we're just kind of hitting a lot of titles and showing Queen. This was a 1981 pressing, and I prefer the track lineup to the newer pressings. And there's some glare. I apologize for the glare. It's early in the morning, and we're talking about Gang of Four, 1979 Entertainment, highly influential album. phenomenal. They had a sound of their own, very British. They had something to say. They were funky. They could rock. They were post-punk. And this is an all-time classic. Entertainment. Band I love and I dig a lot deeper on this band on a video is Simple Minds. Life in a Day. Their first album, great. They started off great. It's a happy album, and then it becomes a little more eerie at the towards the end. London Calling, The Clash. We'll show some bonus Clash coming up. I have a ticket stub from Combat Rock coming up as some bonus, along with some mystery footage. Neil Diamond, live. This is interesting, bought for $1. My other half found it at the library for $1. It's in mint condition. Sweet Caroline. I wish it had Forever in Blue Jeans. But hey, also Kentucky Woman Connection that Deep Purple plays. So cool stuff. That is on here. I show this in a 1980s video. I want to thank everybody for participating, supporting my 80s vinyl video of a His and Hers collection. It was released in 1979. About half these songs or more were on the charts during the 1980s. Breakfast in America, Supertramp, one of the all-time greatest albums ever. We have the Cars. I also do, I believe, a ranked, I do a ranked Cars vinyl video. We have some Eddie Rabbit. This came out in the 80s, but some of the songs, a lot of the songs are from the 70s. This is Greatest Hits Part 2. Part 1, I didn't know as many of the songs from, but I definitely remember Part 2. We have some more Cars. Candio, arguably my favorite Cars album. Just one of the best, coolest bands ever. So influential still today. Cheap Trick, one of my all-time favorite bands, and this is my favorite album by Cheap Trick. I also do a ranking of theirs, and I'm the guy that loves the first album, but I adore all these albums. And in black and white, Heaven Tonight. Seen them, I think, 3-4 times live, and they never disappoint. Just one of the coolest bands ever. Timeless. If you talk 70s, we're talking some Cheap Trick. Especially this one here. Live at Budokan. Possibly the coolest all-time live album ever. I love that Foghat live, too. And so many others, but I'm very picky with live albums. That one I grew up on. The Dream Police, one of the coolest concepts. I don't know who would ever thought of such a thing. Amazingly cool. And I have some more Cheap Trick vinyl that I show, and not to promo all my other videos, but I do have a couple gold stamp promos, which are cool, but the one has a press kit in it for All Shook Up. That's 1980, so check it out in that video if you're interested. Van Halen. This was a DJ copy. It's my favorite Van Halen album. It's had so much energy. Alex's drumming is so phenomenal. Alex's drumming is influential in that album, and there is a connection and a reason why, and I talk about that on a jazz video that I do, and that's because Alex was a huge fan of this. Alex Van Halen was a huge fan of Billy Cobham, and the Stratus album is my all-time favorite jazz album, and it just signifies the 70s. I can talk about it non-stop, the musicians on it, etc. And I do on another video. Here we go, Total Eclipse. It's my second favorite jazz album. And of course, we talk about Miles Davis and many more on that jazz video, but there's a connection to Deep Purple. I love Burn. I love this era of the band. And Ian is such a great drummer, also influenced by Billy Cobham. This is kind of cool. Deep Purple, and we have purple vinyl. Stormbringer. Made in Europe, another great live album. I love all marks of the band. So here's the tie-in to Billy Cobham. Tommy Bolin is on this album, and his guitar work is phenomenal on that Spectrum album by Billy Cobham, along with Len Sklar on bass and the Brecker Brothers, many others that play on that Billy Cobham album, Spectrum. Also Total Eclipse, great Billy Cobham album. But these guys were fans of Billy Cobham, heard that album, and hired Tommy Bolin because of his work on such vinyl record. So anyway, some people don't like this one as much. Come taste the band. This is funky 70s and some good hard rock. I do like it. It's funkier than most Deep Purple albums. I still love it. I love almost anything they've ever done. Especially this is a greatest hits. When we rock, we rock. When we roll, we roll. And this is just a great lineup. So we're going to get to some bonus stuff. This came out late 60s. Roxy. This is kind of cool. I'd never heard of this. I got it as a bonus, pretty much a free album. I enjoy it. It's groovy. It came out, I think, really late 1969. I was born in 1968, so this was still in heavy rotation in 1968, of course. And we have more Beatles as well. And we'll do a much deeper dive, like I said, on the classic rock, and especially on female singers, because there's so many great female singers from then. And we'll take a look at those a little closer. First, Devo. That was a great Devo album in the 70s as well. This came out a little later, my favorite Devo vinyl. Late 70s, almost remembered as 80s, Adam and the Ants. Ant Music. EP, very early stuff. Some of those songs were redone with a bit of a different band for Dirk Wears White Sox. Some of this stuff was 1979. Very interesting stuff. Later he'd come out with Kings of the Wild Frontier, which I show in my 80s video, and just adore that album. It sounds like nothing else to this day. We can also show some Hall & Oates. Interesting, again, their arm wrestling here. Rock and Soul Part 1. This came out in the 80s. A lot of the tracks are from the 70s, and some of their best stuff is from the 70s. They are currently arm wrestling again in some lawsuits. Say it isn't so, because I can't go for that. No can do. I wish they could get along, but it's happens so often in duos. This is interesting. Shout out to Dark Barbie. The super groups. So we have Vanilla Fudge, who we just recently saw live. They've been a band since the 60s, and they are still phenomenal, psychedelic live. It's an unreal experience. It's like they bring the 60s back, and they show the kids these days that these guys can still rock, and they just are great. So I could go off on that as well. The Bee Gees are on here, Cream, really cool lineup. The Rascals, Iron Butterfly, who I saw an incarnation of, well, the drummer with Classic Rock All-Stars. We did some roadieing for that. That was a record store guy, so we buy, sell, trade records. It's always a flowing, fluent situation of vinyl, and there's so much more of that coming up. Like I said, we'll show a little more. Some of these songs are from the 70s, the Beatles, arguably the most influential band at that time, and still maybe. For a bonus, we'll show some different formats. Heart. This is a cool greatest hits. Just the tracks on this are amazing. And the Wilson sisters, Ann and Nancy, the way they perform still today is just unbelievable. The vocals are still spot on, if nothing, have gotten better through the years. So you gotta love Heart. Some of the songs on here: Magic Man, Crazy on You, Little Queen, Kick It Out, Heartless, Straight On, Even It Up, Barracuda. Amazing. Great stuff by Heart. ABBA. My mother was from Europe. Her favorite band was ABBA. Can be also called ABBA. I like this here because you can see the different album covers. We'll talk a lot more about them again coming up. That'll give us something to look forward to. David Bowie. Talk about the Black Star album in another video, and I can show it here in a moment even. What a great album. That's actually one of my favorite albums by David Bowie. Of course, Let's Dance is amazing. Can't go wrong with Bowie's stuff in the 70s. And in our heavy hitters of classic rock, we'll be talking much more about them. Here's The Clash. I have a lot more where that came from, including a t-shirt from Combat Rock that I have in a frame. But for now, here's the ticket stub for Combat Rock, which was in the 80s, but little bonus material is always fun. Many people have this, so that's what makes it fun. About in the beginning, we showed the CCR K-Tel. Well, this is a different lineup as far as songs. Either way, you can't go wrong with CCR. More Dire Straits. Best of. The catalog is amazing. The Doobie Brothers. This is a little newer. Steve Miller Band. Billy Joel. Again, on our heavy hitters, we'll have more of that coming up, as well as Joe Walsh. We thought we'd show some CDs. Miles Davis. Some of this stuff was from the 70s, as well as REO Speedwagon. It's kind of cool. Detroit Rock City. The lineup on here, Kiss, I think Black Sabbath. Some cool stuff on this. Of course, Rush. Showed a lot of Rush earlier. I have a lot more where that came from in the 80s. Here is concert ticket, probably with some glare, but I keep it in a case. So Rush at Target Center. What a great show that was with Primus. With Primus. What a double bill. Okay, some 45s. This came out late 79. Some of my favorite Fleetwood Mac stuff. Tusk. Love that cover. This was not on the greatest hits for ELO because it came out right afterwards. Turn to Stone. Another Park, Another Sunday, and Blackwater. The Doobie Brothers. Here's Cars by Gary Newman, one of the best ever. My Sharona by The Knack. Heart of Glass, Blondie. We saw Blondie with Cheap Trick. They still got it. Both bands. The Pretenders. One of the coolest bands ever. Press in Pocket makes it because this was released late 79. Made it on the album was 1980, but the single was released early. Frankenstein. Edgar Winter. One of the coolest videos ever. The live performance of that and just the song itself speaks for itself. Let It Ride. Bachman Turner Overdrive. Probably on the classic rock radio right now. There's Magic Carpet Ride. Steppenwolf. Born to Be Wild. My go-to karaoke song. Smoke on the Water. Many people's first guitar song. I still play it sometimes just to feel good. Groovy Times. And the 70s were that. They were Groovy Times by The Clash and Gates of the West. This is almost like a double A side because they're both great songs. You have to have some Stevie Wonder, Superstition. Makes you think of Stevie Ray Vaughan's great cover. If I Can't Have You by the Bee Gees and Staying Alive. Talk about a double feature. Casey and the Sunshine Band, Get Down Tonight. The Eagles. We'll talk a lot more about the Eagles coming up. Already Gone. Here's some Jim Croce. Okay, so a song you still hear all the time. Dr. John. Right Place, Wrong Time. That's a fun song, and it always makes my day because we can all relate. Devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. Okay, so Charlie Daniels. Had an early pressing of this too. Okay, the wreck of the Edmonds Fitzgerald. What a fascinating shipwrecks. Gordon Lightfoot, and a very cool performance. The Doors, still influencing all through the 70s and till today. Where did the 70s go? Light My Fire, Love Me Two Times. Back to Paul McCartney. Here's a cool, another concert ticket at the Metrodome. That was a great show. I'm not sure how great that shows up. The ink runs dry. I try to keep it in plastic just because, to protect the old ink. Some more Beatles because they were still influencing. Hello, Goodbye on the 45s. Thanks for hanging with me. Some people love 45s. I do. They were always interesting because in the 80s you could buy them for 88 cents quite often. Paul McCartney and Wings. This is a really cool double. And more Paul McCartney's silly love songs. You could buy them for 88 cents back in the day. I know that equates to more money equals more money today. Band Down the Run, if I didn't already say. Had Eric Clapton on cassette, showing some different formats. Fan of Eric Clapton's earlier stuff, I guess, for the most part. Bob Dylan. There's some live Bob Dylan. All right. A few more bonus items, then thanks for sticking with us. Otherwise, check out some of our other videos if you're interested. Big shout out to my subscribers, people who have commented, people who give a like, people who watch. Thanks for your time. Thanks to my family. The Clash, one of my favorites. Has some Cheap Trick again. Devo, so influential. Those albums hold up quite well today, as do these videos. What were the kids listening to back in the 70s? This came out really late in 1969. I dig the pirate and the ship. Peter Pan. This one has a whole book and everything. So it was groovy times. The cartoons were cool and have held the test of time. As has the music. The relevance of the 1970s is so impressive. These bands and how they've held the test of time. Like I said, we're going to do a deep dive now very soon. A look deeper into the music of the classic rock heavy hitters. We'll round out our collection. We'll show many more female artists who were so dominant in the 70s. We'll show some punk, funk, jazz, soul, a lot of classic rock, some outlaw music, bluegrass. So thanks for sticking with me. Have a great day, and we'll catch you on the flip side.